Everyone, thanks again for joining us. We have an awesome agenda. You can see here just kind of an overview of what we have going on today. We're shooting for about an hour and a half meeting, doing this virtually. And so we have two awesome speakers today. We'll hear from Larry and Holly. We'll talk about data modeling, and also we've got some running data. So for all of runners out there in ATUG, this will be really interesting. Before we'll talk, I have some slides to introduce our speakers, but let me just share this with you guys. Here's a look at some upcoming meetings. We've got a meeting planned for next month that is extra special. Nelson's going to kind of give you a little bit of an overview and share more about like who will be on the panel. There's some exciting development there. So next meeting you definitely don't want to miss. It's called Bring Your Boss to ATUG meeting. And so that's going to be next month, August 20th. And we've got a meeting planned September 17th. But we haven't nailed down specifics around that one just yet, and thought it might be a good opportunity to just throw it out to the group and see, does anyone have any suggestions? This is such a new format. Do you have any ideas for topics? Is there any interest around like perhaps breaking up into smaller groups if we could somehow figure out the technology around that, but like a chance to just engage with each other, talk, share ideas or tips or tricks. We'll get to that in a minute too. I think we have a slide where we'll just kind of ask for feedback, and maybe if you're thinking of anything in the chat, feel free to go ahead and add it to the chat. But I think next, Nelson can kind of walk us through Bring Your Boss to ATUG.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. This is something that is really exciting to us. It's an idea that kind of got sparked a few months ago, and the idea was, hey, we have some of the best Tableau champions in Atlanta and beyond, certainly. And at the same time, there's also awareness too of like when we work with organizations and when you're working inside of an organization, there's so much that happens at the leadership level that kind of dictates, hey, what's the strategy? Where are we going? Who decides, what the impact of this is going to be? Who decides what we're going to study and do analysis around in the first place, and so forth. And so we came with a concept of inviting that next level and even beyond level leadership from different organizations, and to really focus and take a whole month, a whole monthly meeting to focus on thinking about, what does analytics look like? How do we make decisions? How do we use data at the executive level, at the leadership level, at the director level? And so the idea was to help analysts and developers kind of have more of a mindset that's a little bit more strategic. And also, we really want to encourage this group. Another slide on this here in just a second, but really want to encourage you to bring your leadership to the meeting. We've got some fantastic leaders in this space who are going to be speaking. So we've got kind of three parts in this upcoming ATUG. So you're going to first off hear from Steve Wexler. And if you haven't heard of Steve Wexler or don't know him, definitely encourage you to check him out. Steve has been a Tableau Zen Master, I think, for as long as they've done the Zen Masters. But he's a Zen Master Hall of Fame recipient. He's also a previous Iron Viz champion. He's done Tableau training as a partnership. He's written or co-authored the Big Book of Dashboards, which I know many of you have. Steve's presented to this group a number of times in the past. And he's going to have a new talk that I think is really in line with what we're going to be focused on, which is kind of inspiring change with data visualization. And so it's going to show a number of kind of real world examples and speak to kind of how did this visualization impact an organization? How did it kind of change the direction and so forth? And I think this group would be hopefully really receptive to kind of hearing more about that. The next kind of part of that meeting is going to be a panel discussion. And what we want to be able to do here is help everybody kind of get into the minds of what leaders are thinking about and how they're making decisions, and how can you be a part of the strategy that's happening at your organization from a data and analytics perspective. And we're really grateful. We've got a handful of awesome folks that are lined up. One of those folks is the former Chief Marketing Officer at Tableau, Elisa Fink. She's a friend of ATUG. We're super grateful to have her. And then many of you also know Mark Jackson, again, another ATUG community supporter for many, many years, 4-time Tableau Zen Master, current XSL expert, Director of Business Intelligence over at Piedmont Hospital. There's a handful more panelists who are just waiting on some approval in order to be able to speak, and so we're excited about that. But just those two folks are going to be amazing. They're going to have some awesome perspectives about, again, how the leadership views data analytics and how you can be more strategic about it. And then our third piece, our closer, is going to be, again, friend of the ATUG community, former ATUG leader, Paul Isborg. Paul handed the reins over to Karen and myself, man, almost a year ago, I guess. But Paul's done some amazing work in the Tableau community, formerly of Oldcastle, now is actually at Tableau Software as a strategic customer success manager. And maybe that for a handful of you who are on the call to enable your organizations. But Paul's going to be focused on data literacy and how important it is in a season like this. And how important it's going to be as we go forward. I think you will definitely see the topic of data literacy come up a ton as we talk about these things and expanding the ability for your organization to have a fluency in data literacy. So, Karen, if you hit the next one, this is your invite. Really want everybody to certainly be there that's already here on this call, but really want to encourage you to reach out. This is a really special ATUG. We're putting a lot of effort into this. And we've also got some other big announcements that we will be announcing at that ATUG. So we're excited about some cool things that are in the works as well. But really encourage you to be there and encourage you to invite others. And they don't have to be in Atlanta, right? You can invite people from all over the world because this is going to be a special one. So I'm really excited about that.
Awesome. So we wanted to take a few minutes before we get started with the first presentation and just throw this out there. If someone can be kind of like monitoring, taking a look at the chat, if anyone has any ideas around, it is tough with everything being virtual and us not getting together face to face, just to still network, get to know one another, to ensure these meetings are engaging and we have a chance to like ask questions. Does anyone have any ideas, or is there anything that you've seen that maybe worked, in your own company for a way to do like perhaps a breakout session or just a way to have folks like networking, something like that? Does anyone have anything in the chat?
Not yet.
Not
I'm
yet.
sure everybody's typing.
Come on, guys. We can always, if we don't see any out there, we can always come back.
In advancing their careers in Tableau, Slack conversations would be interesting to group folks by industry.
Yeah. I'm
there with you guys.
For sure. I think we've tried that at another ATUG, and it was pretty cool a few years back.
Have attendees send you their favorite tips and tricks before meetings and have them present them. Should we be utilizing Slack more? Yes. Highly encourage the Slack. We got a slide on that here in just a second too.
For sure. We can keep watching it, and please just keep sending your ideas, like put them in the chat, and we'll keep an eye on those. But to keep us on track, I'll move forward. Let's see. Okay, Slack. So this is a really cool way. We used to ask about job opportunities. We used to have the networking break, and it was a really good time to give out business cards. And please do that today. Feel free in the chat if you are looking to hire someone, if there is an opportunity at your company, please utilize the chat and let folks know. Also, this Slack channel is a great way to like put that information out there and share that with folks in the group and get those jobs in front of like Tableau experts all across Atlanta. You can find, here's just a link that will take you right to the Slack, and you can join.
Actually, it won't. That one will not work. So just before everybody kind of emails and tells us that that's not working, we will make sure that we get you a new link. The links expire every 30 days, which is annoying, and we didn't quite get that one up. But we will, in our
Well, I
follow-up
can
email
send it
after
in
this
the
meeting.
like
Yep,
email that follows up when we send content out from this meeting.
exactly.
I'll be sure to include a link for
Yep.
Slack so that everyone can join. If you're not already on there, it's a
just
great
put
way
it
to
in
like
chat.
stay connected.
Oh, Nathan just posted it into the chat window.
Oh,
So
okay,
Nathan's
great.
got it for us right there. So anybody that's interested, hit that link that's right there in the chat window, and that will take you so that you can register if you're not already in.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce today's speakers. First up, we're going to hear from Larry Clark, who is with Tableau. He's a solutions engineer at Tableau. And just a little about Larry. He joined Tableau in 2018 after spending several years at Microsoft, well, working as a practice lead for a Microsoft partner, but prior to that, worked 20 plus years at Microsoft. And he is going to share about data modeling, the new data modeling in Tableau. And then after our Kahoot break, we will hear from Holly, who was a course director with the Atlanta Track Club and is going to share data visualizations on the Olympic marathon trial in Atlanta. I'll go ahead and let Larry take over sharing his screen if I can just figure how to stop sharing. Here we go. Thanks, guys, for being here.
Thanks, y'all.
All right. Is my microphone working okay? Can y'all hear me? Uh-oh.
Yes, you sound
I
great.
can hear
Okay.
you.
Sorry,
Good.
unmute.
Brief panic. All right. So let's talk about where my, oh, this is a great start. I closed my slides so that I could email them. And now I need to go find them and open them up again. One sec. Be right there.
Take your
Talk
time.
amongst yourselves. Somebody mentioned Alone. We've been watching the latest season of Alone. It's one of our favorite TV shows. I feel terrible sitting on a couch while those people are struggling, but I guess that's the point, right? There we go. First, before I get into this, I want to say thank you for being part of a Tableau user group. I do competitive presentations with customers, and one of the main points that I make is that there's been for 15 plus years now, because Tableau has this core of VizQL. It's fun, it's beautiful, it's very powerful. We've had this positive feedback loop of people understanding Tableau, becoming fans of Tableau, evangelizing Tableau, becoming part of the community, giving Tableau feedback. I was with Microsoft for over 20 years, and that slips in once in a while. Giving Tableau feedback, going to TC, just this positive feedback loop that's been going for 15 years now. On behalf of Tableau, thank you so much. We love you. We're proud of you. Thanks for being Tableau users and customers. This is a huge deal. Relationships, not interpersonal relationships, although they are a huge deal, but relationships in Tableau that shipped in 2020. That's me. Relationships used to be called, internally they were nicknamed object model, and then shortly before we were going to ship, they were called the data model. Neither of which were really an appropriate label for the technology, for the capability. And relationships makes a lot more sense, and we'll hopefully talk about that. I'll send these, you'll get these slides with these links after the presentation, but let me just go through some resources real quick that you can use as homework. Bethany Lyons is a senior product manager at Tableau. She may have spoken here before. She was invited to do this, and she wasn't available, so she suggested that I, her understudy, present. So sorry for that. She's a lot smarter than I am, but I'll do my best. She has written a couple of blog posts for Tableau.com on relationships. This part one talks about 8 different semantics, 8 different rules that are internal to relationships. And Bethany always does a fantastic job of explaining difficult technical concepts. And I usually have to read her stuff early in the morning when I'm sharpest in order to be able to keep up with it. This part 2, tips and tricks, I didn't know about until I started preparing for this. And I read it and I was blown away by some of these. There's one here that you really need to pay attention to. Improve query performance of dashboard filters. I'm actually going to reach out to a customer that I talked to last week about this specific one because it seems like it could make a huge difference. So be sure that you read Bethany's blog posts. There's an article here in Help about the Tableau data model. There's how relationships differ from joins. There's an overview of what we did in 2020.2. This is Bethany's TC19 talk. This was at the end of the week. I was, I think bedraggled is a good word because I had my first TC was TC19 and I presented 6 times. And I sat in the back of the room for this talk and it was fantastic. So I encourage you to consume that. This is a very brief product group presentation that gives a great overview of what relationships are and what they do. And then this guy, Tableau Tim, has a fantastic British accent, and I hope to emulate what he did in this presentation. But if you don't latch on the first time, go watch this presentation. I think he did a fantastic job of covering what relationships are. So why have we built relationships? I won't talk about why it took so long, but why did we build relationships? Well, since the beginning of time, Tableau has stored data, whether you queried a single Excel spreadsheet or whether you queried 19 different related tables and pulled them together as one result set. Tableau internally has stored that data as a rectangle, as a single table, as a flattened data set. And that's the way 80% of applications, 90%, 99% of applications in the world store data. If you've ever used Python and you've used a pandas data frame, it's a rectangle. No matter how many queries, no matter how many tables you query to get it, it's still a data frame. It's still a rectangle. An Excel spreadsheet is the same kind of thing unless you do a bunch of work with VLOOKUPs. This is the first way that an application developer represents data internally to an application. We've needed to move beyond this as Tableau for a while. We've been working on this for years. We needed to get it right. We needed to make it performant. We needed to make it usable. And I think we've done that. It shipped first in 2020.2, and we'll continue to sort of turn crank, as you might imagine, and add features and capabilities and ease of use improvements and that sort of thing to it. So if in 2020.1 and prior, you want to viz flat data, you want to build a viz on a Tableau data set, you need to accommodate the fact that the data that you're trying to analyze from a specific table might not be at the finest grain of detail in that data set. And so you might have repeated records, and you might need to use a level of detail expression in order to accommodate that, in order to fix that problem. So let me illustrate that by going into Tableau. I'm actually using 2020.2. When you pull in, this is an aside, when you pull in a prior to relationship data source, when you open up a prior to 2020.2 Tableau file, you're going to see a single node in your data source here. And that is where your migrated data sits. That's where your legacy data model sits. And if you double click into that, or you click the down arrow and click open, then you'll have, the view that you're used to. I have a data set here zoom. There we go. So I have 4 records. I have 4 tables in SQL Server. I have a customer. I guess I should back up a couple of steps. There is a bookstore data set that there's a link to in the PowerPoint. You can pull down that bookstore data set, go through the tutorials, and it will give you a great feel, hands-on for what relationships are and what they do. I wanted to build something that is as simple as possible as a data set, in order that the complexity of the database itself is not getting in the way of customers grasping what relationships are and what they do. So I built this. It's a veterinary clinic database. It's completely fictitious data. I've got one customer, Ginger. Ginger has paid $1,350 total to this vet clinic. I have one animal, Spot, and you can see the relationship there on customer ID to Ginger. Spot weighs 35 pounds. Spot has had 3 appointments. There are only 3 appointments in this data set. Spot's had 3 appointments, and the billings for those appointments total $700. And in those 3 appointments, that first appointment, there were 2 prescriptions. One was heartworm medication, and the other was some skin cream. Second appointment ID 2, some flea and tick medication. And the third appointment, apparently Scott hurt themselves, so painkillers and antibiotics were prescribed. And I think that number is $650. The total prescription billing number is $650. So that is the database that we're working against for this little demonstration. And so I've got my customer, and these are actually views because I've got a little bit more data in the database that we'll go to later if we have time. I've got my customer associated with animal on customer ID, associated with appointment, associated with prescription. And you notice here, I've got my rectangular data set. Prescriptions, if I scroll over here to the right, prescription is the finest grain of detail. There are 5 prescription records. So there are 5 records all the way across. And you notice that Ginger appears 5 times. Total billings of $1,350 appear 5 times, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. For many of you who are old hands at Tableau, not saying that you're old, you look terrific. For many of you who are old hands at Tableau, this is elementary stuff, and I apologize, but I wanted to start at the beginning in order to help everyone come up to speed. So if I ask Tableau, if I walk up to Tableau and I say, hey, what are the animals? There's Spot, and how much do they weigh? And I put it in the right place. I see that Spot weighs 175 pounds. Spot needs to go on a diet. So if you've worked with Tableau in the past, you know that the fact that we're summing weight for every animal here is the problem. And what we need to do to get around that is we need to write a level of detail expression. And here's my level of detail expression. That is not the right one. Animal weight. Here's my level of detail expression. I'm fixing customer ID and animal ID and asking for either the average or the minimum or the maximum, some expression that's going to isolate one value. And if I grab animal weight and bring that out here as well, then if I put it in the right place again, I get 35 pounds, which is the correct answer. Okay. So I can do the same kind of thing with customer and where's appointment? Appointment billings. So appointment billings here says that it's $1,200. Actual customer billings, if I bring out the level of detail expression, is $700. So let's go take a look at what happens in relationships, or using relationships. There we go. What we're doing with Tableau and relationships is, rather than storing the data internally within Tableau as a rectangle, as a single denormalized or flattened data set, is we're storing each one of the tables individually. And we're asking you to define, instead of defining static joins between the individual tables, we're asking you to define relationships between those tables. So let me get rid of this prescription view, and I'll bring back the prescription view again. This is called the noodle. I don't think you'll find that in the documentation, but that's what we call it internally. And Tableau has figured out correctly that we want to relate appointment to prescription on appointment ID. You notice when I click on customer, I see the customer table. When I click on animal, I see the animal table. When I click on appointment, you get the idea. I see the appointment table. Tableau is now maintaining these individual relational tables individually, internally. So if I go to sheet 1 here and I grab customer name and I ask about appointment billings, I get $700, which is correct, without needing a level of detail expression. Because what we're doing over here is we're saying, hey, Tableau, if you need to relate customer and appointment, this relationship defines how I want you to relate customer and appointment. I'm not telling you to do an inner join. I'm not telling you to do a left outer join or a right outer join. I'm telling you this is the relationship. You make the best decision at the time that the viz needs to be materialized as to what the join type should be, what the join should be. And Tableau does that. Without level of detail expressions, you can get the right answers the first time, every time. So if I go grab animal weight, in case you don't believe me, animal name and weight. Spot weighs 35 pounds. He's gone on a diet. So there we go. Let's talk about, so that's sort of the first introduction to relationships. We maintain all the tables individually inside Tableau. We ask you to define relationships rather than defining static joins. And given those relationships that are defined, Tableau makes the right choice at the time at the time the viz is materialized as to what the appropriate join should be. Make sense? I'm seeing some indication of chats going along. Is there anything that I should stop and address, or should I just keep going?
I'm taking a look now.
The one thing that I think is worth addressing is Ivana was saying, you should call it a VLOOKUP to go after the Excel user base, but I think it's worth pointing out this is drastically different than a VLOOKUP. So maybe, Larry, if we got a handful of folks kind of coming from that Excel world, could you just kind of very quickly kind of help everyone understand what the difference between what you're showing here and kind of the VLOOKUP and the way the two would operate?
Huh. It's been probably a decade since I've done a VLOOKUP.
I bet Nelson can get into it.
You want me? I can take a swipe, yeah. And then Larry, maybe you correct me when I get it wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
sounds good.
What happens with a VLOOKUP is that the Excel is looking for a particular value, and then the very first time it finds it, it's going to return back to you whatever, what you want, some number of columns shifted over from one place to another. The difference between that and what you're going to get with a database, if you were doing a true join, would be that it's not going to do it just for the first one. It's going to do it for every single time that it sees that value. And that's part of the challenge, and kind of what Larry was showing at the beginning, is that if it has that same value, this, think about state, for example. If you had a table that had 50 rows of the population of the state, and then you had transactions and state was in that, if you brought in the population of the state, it would show that number, X number of times for every time you had a transaction. If you sum that, then you get some number that doesn't mean anything. And that's what Larry was kind of showing in the beginning. I think the beautiful thing is, Larry, with the relationships, you have the ability to kind of say this is a many to many, or it's a many to one, or it's a one to many, or a one to one. And so Tableau can smartly kind of say, okay, hey, I only have kind of one population piece here. And I know that, if you're trying to do, the sum of revenue spent divided by the population of a state, now Tableau is going to smartly do that. But it's a much smarter thing that is happening than a VLOOKUP, which is kind of VLOOKUP is very simple. What this is doing, in some ways, the result would be the same, but this is a smarter process, if you will.
Yeah, this is automating something that, and actually, that was one of the. I sort of abandoned my slides, but that was one of the slides that you'll see. I've got a little robot there building the relationships for you in one of the slides. In prior versions of Tableau, go back to the flat version of this data set. In prior versions of Tableau, as we talked about, you statically join the data sets. You build a static join between two tables, and you can specify a left or a right or a full outer or an inner join. What relationships does is actually it defaults to full outer, and then it optimizes down from there. Let's get into that a little bit. I'm actually going to switch. So I'm on the sort of flat view here, and I'm going to switch over to a view of a larger database. So I'm going to show you that right here. It's the same tables, but it's just more records. And hopefully this makes sense. I've added a couple of customers. I've added Blair and Albert. Notice that Albert, if you look down at the animal table, there is no customer ID 3 in the animal table. I've added a couple of animals. There's Patch and Sparkles. And you notice that Sparkles doesn't have a customer. So I've got Sparkles and Albert aren't related, but I've got a customer in here that doesn't currently have any animals. There might be somebody who's come in hoping to foster a kitten, or somebody who, whose cat is, whose animal is no longer with us. And then I've got an animal here, Sparkles, who is a Pacific Northwest Sasquatch, weighs 460 pounds. Obviously Sasquatches don't have owners. Everybody knows that. So we've got null values. If we build a relationship between those two tables, that customer table and that animal table, if we do it with an inner join, guess what? We're not going to see Albert. We're not going to see Sparkles. We've got a set of appointments here, animal ID 3. So appointment 6 was Sparkles, and we didn't charge Sparkles anything. And then appointment 6, is prescription 9, 365 doses of hair detangler for $4,200. That was what we charged Sparkles. So let's go back to our flat, our data model or our Tableau instance that shows us the pre-2012 data. And I will select all, and I'll go over to data source, and I'll show you. I double click in here. You see the same data source that we had: customer, animal, appointment, prescription. We've got inner joins between all of them. And you notice we have a Spot and Patch, 2 animals. You notice that we have Blair and Ginger, 2 owners. Albert and Sparkles are not in our data set. And if this were a bank, we would have accounts that we might have accounts that don't currently have an owner. We wouldn't know that money exists. We might have owners. We might have account owners that we might want to contact to see why they don't have an account right now. It could be a marketing opportunity, and it would be lost, because if we do a For example, if we ask for all the customer names, yeah, we only get Blair and Ginger. Even if I, go get what a Blair and Ginger's animals weigh. Of course, we need to build an LOD expression for that, but you get the idea. We're losing data unless we build this as an outer join, a full outer join, and then we build connections over to appointment and prescription as well. We need to do some extra work to pull Albert and Sparkles into our analysis. Now let's go take a look at the example that I prepared with relationships. I'll go get all the data. Make sure I've done that correctly. Yes, we have all the prescriptions, all the customers, all the animals. So if I go to a new data sheet, if I go to a new sheet and I ask for animal names, I ask for customer names. Actually, that's interesting. If I ask for animal weights, there we go. There's Sparkles. I can see, I can view this data even though an inner join might not return all the data that I wanted to see. And I just inadvertently came across a demonstration of a couple of examples of dynamic join types that Tableau shows us. So I'm going to go back a couple of steps here. And you notice that I've asked for customer names and animal names, but I haven't actually pulled out any metrics, any measures onto the into the viz. And so all Tableau is doing right now is it's showing us dimensions that have values that are connected. If I want to actually show values, if I want to show both relationships and null relationships, I actually need to bring measures into the viz. And so when I bring in the total billings measure, Albert has a total billings record and Sparkles has a weight record. And so Tableau made different decisions based on different decisions of which join type to use based on what I was actually asking in the viz. And so this is something that you need to get to understand in Tableau 2020.2 and later as to how relationships work and how you can do this kind of thing. And there are a couple of tips and tricks that Bethany has documented in one of those blog posts that will show you that as well. One interesting aspect that's possibly more of an enterprise type topic has to do with queries. So I'm going to go here to help, settings and performance, and I'm going to say start performance recording. And then I'm going to ask for, customer name and maybe appointment billings. Go to show me and say date. There we go. So now I've asked for customers' appointments. I haven't asked for anything from this prescriptions table. I'll go here, settings of performance, stop performance recording. And that's going to think for a second and come back with a report of exactly what happened. Let's go do the same thing in relationships or with relationships. Start performance recording. And ask for customer name and appointment billings. There we go. Help, settings of performance, stop performance recording. Okay, now let's take a look at what happened over here. I executed this query, and the query, despite the fact that I didn't ask anything about prescriptions, we had to cross the animal table, if you remember, in order to get from customer to appointment, but we didn't ask about anything on the prescriptions table. You notice here that our select statement hits customer, animal, appointment, and prescription. Why is that? That's because we're going to denormalize this data set. We need to get the whole rectangle in order to bring back this data set. So we need to hit Tableau prior to 2020.2, prior to relationships, needs to hit every table in the data set for every query. Now, you might be able to anticipate where I'm going with this. Existing query, there we go. We hit appointment, animal, customer. We did not hit prescription with that biz because we needed to cross animal in order to get from appointment to customer, but we didn't ask anything about prescriptions. So Tableau didn't touch the prescription table. That could potentially be a big win from a performance perspective if you're hitting a large data warehouse, if you're hitting a fact table that you don't necessarily need to hit all the time. Now let's talk about a couple of things that you probably ought to know. Say you have an export from some production system in your organization, and you've got in that export, it's exporting monthly files into or weekly files into a directory somewhere, and you need to pull those files in and union them to build a table. To do so, you would click here and say convert to union. And what that'll do is it'll ask you, bring up a dialog where it asks you if you want specific tables or if you want to specify a wildcard. You would say in this directory, everything that's .csv, that's what I want to pull in. And as long as those files are shaped the same, hey, Tableau is going to handle that. That's how you do that in the relationships view in 2020.2 and later. Let's say that you've got some information about prescriptions, maybe the cost of prescriptions so that you can maybe calculate the profit of each one of these prescriptions, and you'd like to join that data in. You can, this is we call the conceptual view of these tables, or the virtual view of these tables. If you want to get to the physical definition of a table, that's when you open up that table's virtual definition. This enables you to describe the physical makeup of that table. So now if I want to bring in medical details here, I get the sort of old school view. I want to create an inner join between prescription name and prescription name here because I'm lazy and I didn't build a join key. And now I might say, you know what? I've got I've already got a prescription name field, so I don't need to see that. So I'll go ahead and hide that. All right, so now I've got my cost measure as well as my prescription billing measure. And so I can subtract the two and get a profit number for each prescription. In order to get out of this view, you click the X. And now this symbol, so this symbol here indicates a union, and this symbol here indicates that this virtual table definition is actually made up of a join inside there. Does that make sense?
It does. And
Okay.
I think it might be good if we would take a quick moment here to kind of ask for questions and begin to kind of wrap.
All right. Sounds good.
Unless you have like maybe one more slide, but there've been some good questions over on the chat.
Nope. I think I covered all of it.
Cool. One thing, I think you touched on this, but maybe since you've got your screen up, if you could just kind of show, there's kind of some questions around, well, hey, I used to be able to do this, and now I'm concerned that I'm not going to be able to kind of do the old way of kind of doing the data with joins and stuff like that. Could you just kind of show the fact that those kind of objects that you have are really containers, and that you can kind of click in? I think you kind of did that, but maybe that prescription one that you've got there could be
Yep, just
a good
did.
example.
So a good way to think of this philosophically is the entire building is there. If you think of Tableau and the sort of the data model, the data structure within Tableau, that entire building is still there. Everything works the same. The elevators are still in the same place. All the machines are in the same place. We added a floor and a new entrance, but everything below that floor is still there. This is I talked about this as this is a robot that creates the joins for you. All you have to do is specify the relationship. So if you double click into one of those relationships tables, you get your old school static joins here. You can specify what type of join you want. You can also define joins here on calculated fields. We don't have that feature ready yet in relationships. You can't do relationships on calculated fields. So if you need to do a join on a calculated field, pulling two fields together as a key to relate to something else, you'll need to do that in this physical table view.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really helpful. One
Other question? Before I forget, because I did, there's a edit relationships dialog here. In that edit relationships dialog, you can add more than one field, so you can relate on multiple fields if you need to. And there's this caret here that you can click to get performance options.
Oh, cool.
Only go here if you know what you're doing and you know the answers in the data source that you're going against. But you can specify cardinality here. And so if you know the cardinality of the underlying data set, you can give Tableau a hint and you might cause it to optimize its queries. You can also specify referential integrity. So if you know that the underlying data source is maintaining referential integrity on your behalf, you can specify that here. And again, that'll enable Tableau to optimize some of its query decisions. So that's the performance options part of the relationship dialog. Again, don't go there if you don't know what you're doing. But if you do, you can potentially speed up queries.
Well, this has been super helpful. There's a handful more questions, but we will address some of those. Ward, I'll follow up with you in the chat, and really appreciate you in talking us through this. This is some awesome stuff from Tableau. The ability to do the many-to-many relationships has been something that I know has always been a limitation for many years, and so excited to now be able to do that.
We are so thrilled to have finally shipped it. And,
yeah, exactly.
And it's working and it's fast. It seems really stable, and we'll continue to innovate on it. Be sure to put your feedback in the give your feedback to Tableau as to what you want to see next and what issues that you see. I've already done so with a couple of things. So thanks a lot, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And I would say too, especially if you've got really large data sets that you're working with, those will be kind of where I think the sauce is made with this feature. So, Karen, I think we want to invite Nathan Sedembrini to do a quick announcement. Nathan, do you have a screen to share?
Sure do. There we go.
Hey, buddy.
All right. Let's see. Well, yeah, my slide's a little outdated. Sorry. Woo.
No worries, man.
Here we go. All right. Coming at you. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, so we've got the Alteryx user group coming up this next Thursday at 3 to 4, and then we're going to actually follow the user group with a happy hour from 4 to 4:30. Should be pretty fun. If you want to sign up, you can use that.
Wait, is this a virtual happy hour?
Yeah, virtual happy hour. Sorry.
I was just thinking, like, wait, are bars open?
Although, if anyone lives in Gwinnett and wants to hang out on my back porch, and you want to bring some drinks, come on. But yeah, so join the community. That's where that takes you. And then from the community, there's a link to sign up, register for that user group. So we actually have a pretty special user group next week. We've got the guy who is responsible for the crew macros.
Marquis crew. Marquis.
Something. But yeah, so if you've ever used the crew macro pack, list runner and all those good things, he's going to be giving us kind of a fun rundown of that. So there you go. Turn that off. Oops. You can see my my graphic design tool of choice here. Actually, is not PowerPoint, but yeah, it works. All right, guys. So it's now time to, let's see. Let's get some original music going. Oh, you know what? I need to share the audio. I don't think I shared the audio. Hold on one second. And there's all kinds of problems today. But Anna, while I'm pulling this up, why don't you tell us what the winner of today's Kahoot is going to receive?
We were just messaging, and I told Karen that I'm going to win Kahoot, so there's just really no need to talk about it. I'm just going to go ahead and send her my email address. Yeah, you have my email address. No, we'll need the email address of the winner. Seriously, I can't play. I'm disqualified because I wrote many of the questions. Nathan and I wrote the questions, so. But $25 gift card to the Tableau store, and that's pretty awesome.
That is awesome.
That's super awesome. Wait, so what can you buy at the Tableau store?
T-shirts. I have a water bottle at Tableau.
Like, yeah, all sorts of stuff. Stickers, like laptop, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so guys, if you're new today, if this is your first time, this is the fun little break. Instead, kind of in lieu of networking, we do a little Kahoot. So if you just open up your phone and go to kahoot.it, put in this number, and then pick a name that's, family friendly, and got a handful of questions, and you can, win $25 worth of Tableau dollars to go buy yourself some swag.
So there is an app, and you can download it on your phone. It does work a little faster than the browser. Fast is important because you get more points the quicker you answer the question correctly. So there's that.
Is that Antoine's secret? Is that he's rocking the app and not the browser?
I wonder. Because Antoine has won how many times? 2? 3?
Twice, right? At least. Right, Antoine?
We've only done it 4 or 5 times, so he's like...
Yeah, I know, but he wins like 50% of the time.
I know. What a boss.
Twice.
The secret is probably maybe the app, but also knowing what the topics of discussion are for, because we go through and go, what are we talking about? Who are we talking to?
Do y'all want to pick the winner? Should we pick who we think is going to win just based on the names? I'm going to go with Cobra.
Run JMC is a winner for me.
Okay, so in order to claim your prize, we will need an email address from the winner. So yeah, there's that. I'm curious, there's 93 of you and there's only 34 of you playing. Come on, guys.
Going with knee hurts is the winner. That's a I feel your pain, literally. My knee hurts. I've been backing off the running lately for my ankle and my knee. So that was a hint. We might have some running questions, or at least related to Atlanta, because this is the Atlanta Tableau user group. We'll also have questions related to Tableau. I have a retest question from a previous Kahoot that was probably the most missed question. And since I am a Tableau trainer, I have to hit this one home that you have to understand. I won't say anymore. Till we get there.
10 more seconds, people. What do we say?
Make
it happen, y'all.
Is the music at an okay volume, or should we bump it up, bump it down?
No, it's good. I'm digging.
All right. to a nice even 44. We're gonna go. There it is. Game time. Oh, 45. That's a
I'm
good
also
number.
rooting for the F COVID.
Yeah, we
I
got
like
some
Hillary
good names
Banks.
today. We got
Hillary
Flume
Banks, like
Platoon.
from
That's pretty
Fresh
fun.
Prince of Bel-Air.
And West Philadelphia, born right.
Uh-oh, we went down in players. I guess we should just
All
start
right,
playing.
better start it quick. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Game time. True or false? With the new data noodle, you can no longer create joins and unions in Tableau.
If you were paying attention, you know the answer.
Yeah, because there's no need, right? With the noodle, it just happens.
I mean, you don't need to union your data. It's fine. It's totally fine.
All right, you guys are
Okay.
paying attention.
Good.
Yeah. So no longer, you actually do still need to do joins and unions. It's not. the
Yeah,
same.
and it'll let you, just like Nelson was talking about, you can open up that window and you're allowed to do it.
Or you can, but you don't have to.
Oh yeah, you don't have to, but you
You
can.
just make a relationship. You don't have to join.
You take away the, what do they call it? The physical layer or the logical layer and go back to the physical layer. They have layers.
Sounds like
There's
an onion.
layers to this player.
Anna
like
is too
Shrek
smart
and
for
Monkey
this.
right
I have to teach this stuff.
game.
Man.
They threw that in there right away.
Everybody
Here
love
we go.
parfait.
Question number 2.
Who doesn't love parfait?
We should have reordered this question and put it first. If you don't get this right, that's your fault. The new data
thought it
modeling
was
feature is called the sausage. Or the ampersand. Can we get 100%? Oh, pretty close.
It's okay.
Pretty
Not
close. We should have let off with that question, I think.
Yeah, I thought it was first. I must have
It was. I
accidentally
think they're in random order.
moved them.
That's,
Oh, does it randomize it? Oh, that's not good.
there's an option for that.
Oh, all right, I'll have
It's
to make.
probably my fault.
I got
I'm
it.
gonna-
No, it's probably mine.
All right, so let's see. Who do we got? Matt D, holding strong, and Alagi. I like saying the names. That's fun.
Nice.
All right, here we go. Question number 3. What is the best platform to communicate or collaborate with your friends from ATAB? Is it TikTok? Is it Bumble?
Bumble.
Could be Bumble. Is it MySpace?
Even this one made me laugh.
I'm glad. Look at
Yeah,
that.
come on.
I think that's the first time we've ever gotten like 100%.
Amazing.
That was the Mariana Rivera question right there. Unanimous decision.
All right, M Tappa. M Tapper pulling in. Alagis holding strong. Which of these is not an Atlanta Track Club event?
This is a hard question. I had to look it up.
I know. Me too. So all great road races
I know 2 of them.
in
I
the
didn't know.
Atlanta area. And are you a runner?
I love to run. Yes, I run the Peachtree every year.
Yeah. Have
Yes.
you ever done the hot chocolate race?
I've never done the hot chocolate. That is the one that is not Atlanta Track Club.
That's
But
correct.
people try to talk me into it, and I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not running that cold for hot chocolate.
It's got the best swag, peeps.
I've heard
It
that.
does.
It has the best swag.
Better than the Atlanta Track Club events? Can't.
Yeah.
I will tell you,
Yeah.
Friday
Amazing.
nights, I have a crew that we run. I live in Woodstock. We run a mile and a half to Reformation Brewery, have a couple beers, and
Ooh.
run the half a mile back, mile and a half back. So it's about, well, it ends up being, actually a little over 3 miles because it's a little bit more than a mile and a half. And we get beer, and it's free.
That sounds awesome.
Not free beer, but free to run.
Ooh, Matt D reclaiming his spot at the top. Nice. All right, here we go. The famed AJC Peachtree Road Race is a 10K. How long is that in miles? I think we're going to get another 100%. What do you think?
How long is it? 4 hours.
Only if you eat a dozen donuts.
4 hours?
Beers.
Yeah. Well, I guess for the AJC, a Peachtree Road Race, it's like 10 hours, right? How long does that take? Good job. 6.2.
Good job, team.
It's almost 2 pi.
Wow, we got some 4 players getting a streak.
Look at
All
this,
right, here we
Matthew.
go. Only a couple more questions left. So the Peachtree Road Race, traditionally held on?
Traditionally, because it changed this year.
Yeah, so what's the tradition? Is it a really good movie? I need to watch Independence Day again.
I love that Memorial Day movie.
Awesome.
Independence Day, as is tradition.
It is. All right.
Woo,
Wow.
look at this.
Matt D. All right,
That's
who's going to
COVID
take him
moving up.
down? M Tapper, you're like right on the heels. Here we go. All right, a blue pill in Tableau indicates that it is.
Think about it. This is your retest. And you know it specifically in dates. Like it really makes a difference with dates.
Come on, M Tapper.
When does your pill change colors in dates?
Blue pill is discrete.
Yes! All right, we did better this time.
Nice.
It indicates it's a discrete
And
value.
so that's tricky because most measures are also blue.
No, you mean dimensions.
Dimensions, I mean.
And
are
that's
also
because
blue.
they're countable. That's because most dimensions are discrete. Discrete means countable. Continuous is measurable. So that's why most measures go to continuous. But you see this in date parts.
Yes.
When you change your date pill and it turns green, it's continuous.
Love it. Matt D, holding strong. All right, here we go. Last question. What is data modeling? Anna is data modeling right now.
Strike a pose.
I think it's looking pretty for the camera.
Clearly.
Did you add for ants?
I did.
That's great. Making making a tiny replica of the data.
This is what Nathan wrote to Making a Tiny, and I added for ants.
That's amazing. All right, who's our winner?
Who's it gonna be?
I need more volume.
Who is it? Matt D, we need your email. Woo!
Congratulations!
Way to go, Matt D.
Make sure
Well
you send
done.
the email. Like, put it in the chat.
Yeah,
Okay.
Matt D, please reach out. Congratulations.
Congratulations for sure. We can go ahead and transition to Holly. Holly, if you want to get your screen ready and start sharing, the next presentation is visualizing Atlanta Track Club data on the Olympic marathon trials.
Okay, great. Hopefully you guys can all see this. And my
Yep.
You got it. We're good.
Cool, and you can hear me too. Excellent. Well, I am super excited to be talking to you guys today. So thank you, Karen Nelson, everybody in the ATUG group for letting me share this presentation with you. I'm going to blow through this bio slide because I know we're a little bit short on time, and I'd rather get into the good stuff anyway, right? Get into the interesting stuff. So real quick, I'm a lifelong runner, super passionate about the sport of running. I'm a scientist by heart. You know, I've always been, my background is in exercise physiology and public health. I've done really fun and interesting work in my career in the research and product development side of things. And I've been involved in numerous areas of project management. Most recently, I spent the past 6 years with Atlanta Track Club, where pertaining to the talk today, my role there most recently was serving as the course director for the 2020 US Olympic Team Trials Marathon. And lastly, why Tableau? You know, I've always loved digging into the numbers and finding answers to interesting questions. So I was doing a year-end project analysis a few years ago, and stumbled across Tableau, and probably like most of you on this user group, just fell in love with the platform and all it could do, and I've been hooked ever since. So let's talk about what we're going to cover today. It's the 2020 U.S. Olympic Team Trials Marathon, which was held on February 29th of this year in Atlanta, Georgia. So it was literally just a few weeks before this really bad pandemic kind of started raging here in the U.S. And what I really want to share with you is how analytics and data viz was integral in helping our organization run a flawless event. So before I get started, what is Atlanta Track Club? Who is Atlanta Track Club? Because I get asked this question a lot. And I love that it was in the Kahoot presentation. And so probably everybody knows the answer to this, but most people know us as the organizer of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution Peachtree Road Race. So we host the largest 10K in the world. Has 60,000 runners. It's held every July 4th. Last year celebrated its 50th anniversary of the event. Obviously, this current summer, we have postponed it to a different day on Thanksgiving. We'll see if we'll be able to get that in. So Atlanta Track Club has 30,000 annual members. It is the second largest running club in the country, and it's second only to the New York Roadrunners Club, who hosts the New York City Marathon. I think a lot of people aren't aware of that fact. The organization puts on 30 plus events per year. That Kahoot showed a few of them, which was neat. About 125,000 participants cross our finish lines here in Atlanta every year. And these events serve pretty much the entire runner life cycle. So we get kids as young as 2 years old up to adults as old as 96 that participate. So pretty good widespread. Because of this reason, on what we do in the community as well as kind of nationally, one of the recent aims of the club has really been to message Atlanta as Running City USA to the broader national audience. And one important piece of this goal entails consistently putting on world-class elite level races like Peachtree, if you've ever seen the front of Peachtree. So when the 2020 U.S. Olympic Team Trials bid process opened up, Atlanta Track Club threw its hat into the ring. 3 other cities were competing against us, Orlando, Austin, and Chattanooga. Atlanta won the bid, obviously. And it was a huge deal. We were really excited as an organization, and I think it was a big deal for the city. The city was behind us on this whole push, and they were excited to bring this to Atlanta. So let me give you a few quick facts on the trials if you don't know about them. So if you're not a runner, a marathon distance is 26.2 miles in length. The U.S. Olympic Team Trials Marathon event is a quadrennial event. So it's held every 4 years, and it serves to determine the 3 men and 3 women who will go on to represent Team USA in the corresponding Olympic marathon event. So for our purposes, the 2020 trials here in Atlanta selected the 6 athletes who will represent US in the Tokyo Games. Smartly so, those Olympic Games have been postponed until next summer, so we'll get to see these athletes compete next July. How did athletes earn the chance to come to Atlanta and toe the start line? Well, they had to meet a qualifying standard on any sanctioned marathon course during a specific 2-year window between December 2017 and January of 2020. So I've got the standards shown here on the slide, and I'm going to fly in the corresponding paces. So if you're a male and you wanted to come to the trials, you needed to run a marathon under 2 hours and 19 minutes. That's about 5:20 pace. If you're a female, you had to clock a time faster than 2 hours and 45 minutes over those 26 miles. So that's about 6:20 pace. Just to give you guys who are runners a reference, go out there and try to just run one of those and then fathom trying to run 26 of them in a row. So how many athletes typically compete in an Olympic trials marathon event? The men's count historically has fallen in the 100 to 200 athlete range, whereas women's count has ranged around 115 to 250 athletes. So when we put in our bid process, our initial assumption was that we were going to see about 500 total athletes here in Atlanta on race day. But here's what actually happened. This is a quick graphic just showing some historical data dating back to 1984, which is actually the date of the very first women's Olympic marathon trial. So I wanted to start from that date. And really the quick visual here is just seeing the tremendous increase in the number of female qualifiers. So females are in pink here, males are in blue, and whereas the men in 2020 saw about a 23% increase in qualifier counts, the women had a whopping 107% increase in the number of qualifiers. The time standard in 2016 for men and women as a reference was exactly the same. So that was pretty astounding. So halfway through the planning process, after we got the bid, we realized pretty quickly that we were going to be hosting the largest Olympic trials marathon event in history, and not by a small stretch. So some of the key planning challenges that I want to jump into, and before I start, I just want to give you a heads up that I'm really speaking to you today from a course perspective, because I was served as the course director for the event, and this is the area that I lived and touched in. And quite frankly, really, it's the area of the trials planning process that really needed the most analytics work because of its complexity. So I'm speaking from that perspective today, primarily. So one of the first challenges once we got the bid was, hey, we had to design a course for these athletes to run on. So we had a few principles to help guide us. First, we knew we wanted to do a loop course. Loop courses are more logistically easier to put on. They're more cost effective. They're better for the spectators, or they're spectator friendly because you can see the athletes come by 3, 4, 5 times sometimes instead of just once. And in general, a loop course just creates more fan density, more energy, just more excitement for the athletes as well as the city. So we knew we wanted to do a loop course. Secondly, with Atlanta being on the national stage, we wanted and needed to highlight the city's gyms and history. So we identified some landmarks that we wanted to hit. First one being Centennial Olympic Park, which was the site of the 1996 Olympic Village for the Olympic Atlanta Games in 96. We knew we wanted to take the runners down Peachtree Street and some of the iconic landmarks there, Fox Theater, Margaret Mitchell House, Midtown, just Peachtree Street in general is an icon of Atlanta. We of course knew that we needed to include the Martin Luther King Jr. National Historic Site, given the city's deep roots in the civil rights movement. And then lastly, it was important also to us that the Olympic cauldron used in the 1996 Atlanta Games be included in our course route. So the third challenge of the course design is we had to take these first two elements, these first two challenges, and then make the course flat, or as flat as possible. And if you're from Atlanta, we call this Atlanta flat, because if you run, bike, do any kind of exercise in the city, you know that putting on a flat race or designing a flat course in Atlanta is a really, really, really tall order. So here's what we ended up with after a many months long process. And this is really just a simplified version of the course map. We have a nice, really beautiful official course map but it's really hard to read. So I'm kind of just including this very simplified, dumbed down version. Essentially the main loop, so the loop course consists of 2 loops, a bigger main loop, which is 8 miles, and then a smaller loop, which is 3 miles. So the athletes would begin and finish in Centennial Olympic Park, really right outside the College Football Hall of Fame. They take a left, head straight up Peachtree, about 2 miles, do a 180-degree turn, come back down the other side of Peachtree. We sent them east towards Martin Luther King Jr. National Monument, turn back west on Edgewood Avenue, and then back downtown where they would start a new lap. So the runners would do 1 lap of the main loop, 8 miles, 2 laps in the main loop, 16 miles. And then on the 3rd lap, we shuttled them down towards the Olympic cauldron and the rings in the hopes of giving kind of them a last little bit of motivation so they could try to muster the strength and try to punch their ticket to Tokyo in their last 2 miles as they headed back towards the start finish. So this is an elevation profile of this course I just showed you. And this was one of the first uses of Tableau that we utilized for the planning process. And this went up on our website early on. So again, this is built in Tableau. It shows kind of your 3 laps, lap 1, lap 2, lap 3. And we wanted the athletes and coaches to have a very precise and interactive view of the course elevation and the course topography with really granular data, because we knew that they needed to use it in their race preparation. This was a really important aspect of how they might strategize for the event. And just to kind of show you how important, or just tell you how important this type of information was, at one point during the planning process, Nike flew its research team down from their headquarters in Portland with a $12,000 GPS system and mapped our entire course from start to finish, not just including elevation data, but also looking at the camber and slope of the road. So they brought that back to their well-supported group of sponsored Nike athletes at Oregon Project, and use the data in that way. So for those athletes who were not sponsored and may not have had the time and the money and the resources to get to Atlanta and see the course for themselves, this elevation profile on the trials website was a good tool for them. And this is just a screenshot, but it shows that you could hover over any part of this course and see some really granular data of the distance and the elevation at that point. Okay, so let me jump back into the key planning challenges. So aside from the course design, the other big bucket, and it was a scary bucket of challenges that we faced, were these great unknowns. First one being race day weather and temperature. So if you live in Atlanta, it can be wildly unpredictable in late February. This is just a quick graph showing the 2 days that bookend February 29th, and it's 10 years of historical data. So we knew that on February 29th, on the race morning, we could wake up to potentially a day that might have 20 degrees and snow on the roads, or we could be watching the athletes really suffer trying to finish their race in 80-degree temperatures. So weather was a really huge unknown that we needed to build into our course planning logistics and be prepared for icy roads, as well as, you know, hey, we're going to need to beef up our hydration areas if it's a really hot day. And then, of course, we had to build in any other type of weather in between these two. So let's talk about traffic, second big unknown. Atlanta has a metro population of 6 million people. We needed to shut down a large swath of downtown on a Saturday at noon. So I just want to let that sink in for a second. This is a huge undertaking. Once the race started, all the streets and intersections on the course had to be locked down completely and sealed, and in some cases reinforced for safety. So, and that was for about 4 hours. So we knew that we were going to be putting a whole world of traffic hurt and pain on the city and its residents. And it was really imperative that we worked really closely with the city agencies to develop detailed race timelines and contingency plans so we could minimize the impact that we were going to have on the greater good. So we worked really closely with the mayor's office, APD, Atlanta Fire, Grady Hospital, FBI, emergency management, you name it. We had very, very large interagency meetings to help us all get on the same page and figure out how we could do this. Third big unknown was that final athlete count I showed you a few slides ago. We knew we were going to be putting on the biggest trials event in history, but it was really difficult for us to know just how big that was going to be. And this is different than a Peachtree Road Race, where we can easily add 5,000 people to the race. It was very, very hard to add even a 10% increase due to all the complexities that go into putting on a trials event. So from day one, this final athlete count really dogged us, because that window, as I mentioned, it closed in January 19th of 2020. So just 40 days before the race event is when we knew we were going to get that final athlete count. And we obviously could not afford to wait that long. So early on in the process, we did kind of some deep projection analysis to get an idea of where we're going to land. And we actually, I showed you that number of where we hit 772, and we predicted that we were going to be somewhere between 750 and 800 athletes. So that was good. We did a good job on that prediction. That helped us a lot in the process. But I guess the essence of the athlete number is that in order for Atlanta Track Club to execute the weekend successfully, it was really critical for us to have a solid handle on that, and how a larger field, as it continued to grow, was going to affect various areas of the event. So last big unknown, and probably one of the most stressful, and this probably kept me up at night the most, was the appropriate time gap to use between the two race starts. And I say two, because remember, we were hosting the Olympic marathon trials for men and women. And in championship races, men and women can't start together for record setting purposes. So we needed to figure out that sweet spot on how much time to separate the two genders. We only had a block of 3 hours from start to finish. And this was largely dictated by two main entities. One was NBC. This event was going to be broadcast live on a national, to a national audience. So we had a 3 hour block where we had to get the race started and get the race finished from NBC's standpoint. We also knew, again, as stated earlier, because of traffic and the impact we were going to have on the city, we couldn't afford to keep the city closed for 5, 6, 7 hours. We needed to get this race run and done and get everybody back doing their normal business. So adjusting the start is a lot like tugging on a piece of rope when you have a loop course. Because it's connected, every time you touch and change that start time between the two races, it has consequences later on during the race. And sometimes these consequences could be catastrophic. So we were always constantly fiddling with this start gap, trying to figure out what that ideal separation was going to be so that we could give ourselves the best chance of having a really good race day and not have any issues on the course. So I guess the point I'm trying to make with all these challenges is that Atlanta Track Club had 50 years of experience with road races, yet little reference for putting on a unique event like the Olympic trials, and really no hub of central hub of historical information to lean on. Every 4 years, the trials are hosted, by a new city, a new course, a new set of athletes, a new organizing committee with a new way of doing things, and nobody, I promise you, kept good records. So it was really hard to go back and kind of know what we were looking into. So we were definitely flying a little blind and more out of our comfort zone than we like to fly at Atlanta Track Club. So the first part of realizing what we needed to do is we knew we had a critical need. In order to guarantee a successful event, it was really important to analyze as many worst case scenarios that could happen on race day in order for us to plan so that we had so we could prevent these worst case scenarios from happening. And because we only had one chance to get it right, it became pretty clear pretty quickly that we really needed some kind of race simulation tool to help us look into the future. And this is really where Tableau came into the picture pretty big. The screenshot I show right here is the first worksheet in the process of developing this tool. We used GPS coordinates, so latitude, longitude, and ordered the waypoints by distance using this line mark. And what that gave us was this nicely traced course route. So we then saved this image as a PNG file and then used it as a background image in our simulation worksheet. So the second step, I clicked that a little bit too early, was we needed some runners. So we built our course, and now we had to have some little runners traverse this route. So where were we going to find them? Well, we analyzed the actual finish results from the 2008, the 2012, and the 2016 Olympic trials races. And fortunately, these results contain timing data for each mile split. So we had really great information showing us exactly how the races played out from the starting gun to the finish line. And then after analyzing each of these a little more closely, we decided that we were going to go ahead and use the full results from the 2008 trials to create the simulated 2020 runners. And the main reason for that is because the New York course back in 2008 was the most similar in topography to our course. And this is a quick visual showing that. So you've got New York City's course elevation profile on top, followed by Houston in 2012, Los Angeles in 2016, and then here's Atlanta down at the bottom. Hopefully you can quickly see how Atlanta's terrain was going to be the toughest any of the athletes had faced in quite a few Olympic trials years. There's really no flat sections on our course. Very, very hard to find a rhythm. So this, because it mimicked more of the flow of the New York race, we ended up using the results from the New York race to incorporate into our simulation. So once we had the timing data, we then used this to map the runners to the specific GPS locations on our route to then create the simulated race. And before I jump into Tableau, I just want to make one final note about that simulation. Prior to importing the data, we adjusted all of the 2008 times down or slower by 2 to 3%, because we need to account for the fact that our hilly Atlanta course was going to be tougher on the athletes. And we knew we were going to produce some slower men's and women's races. So we made that adjustment to all the times because we knew these little details made all the difference when we were trying to build this race simulation tool to help us look into the future. So what I'm going to do is pop into Tableau here and bring you this race simulation. So hopefully you can see this on the screen. So let me give you a few quick reference points. This is the dashboard, well, the final dashboard we built, let me say that. This was one of many, many iterations, and a couple of things I want you to look at is this is where we landed on the start times between the men's and women's races. So 12:08 was the start for men. This was dictated by NBC, and then we again had a 12-minute gap from when the women were going to start. So the men right here on the course are in blue, the women are in pink, and I'm going to show you show them to you as they move along the course in just a second. But here's our filter that we use, and we used a time of day because this was the most applicable to many of the people we were sharing this with. Not all of them were runners, and this was the best way we could really kind of wrap our own heads around the event, but also share with others on what we were trying to see as the race unfolded. So you could click through every 12 minutes and you could see where the runners would be theoretically on our race course. I'll click through this for a second. The cool thing is you can also highlight the genders, so you'd be able to see kind of really what was going on. You can tell that Peachtree is a little tricky because we didn't develop to the detail where you could see if they were on the left side or right side of the street, but you could tell that information from the distance data there. So just click off of that. And we made a point really early on that we annotated where the male leaders and the female leaders were, as well as where the back of pack is, and that's what BOP stands for, because this was one of the really important things we were honing in on, is when is this lapping going to occur? We knew the fastest male runners were going to lap the slowest female runners and vice versa. We knew the female leaders at some point were going to catch the slowest males, and it was imperative we knew where that was going to happen, because there were specific parts and locations on the course where we knew it could not happen. So this tool was integral in helping us figure out that start time gap so we could really control how this race was going to flow from the start. I guess the one last thing I wanted to show, I'm going to brag for a second here. I wanted to show you kind of how powerful our predictive analysis was on this side. So we've got our male leader here, and his eventual finish time we had predicted was going to be 2 hours, 9 minutes, and 49 seconds. Well, on February 29th, Galen Rupp crossed the finish line first in Atlanta, and he crossed that finish line in 2 hours, 9 minutes, and 20 seconds. So we were under 30 seconds off from that prediction, which was pretty cool. The female, we had our leader, our simulated leader, finishing the race in 2 hours, 27 minutes, and 23 seconds. Alafine Tiliamek crossed the line first for the women's side in Atlanta, and she ran 2 hours, 27 minutes, and 23 seconds. So that was a little bit of dumb luck on that one. I can't believe we nailed it, but that was pretty cool. And really a take-home point here is that our predictive, a prediction of this simulation and the times we used matched what what actually happened on the course. And that was critical for this tool to actually work. And it was critical in our planning, because if we had not gotten that right, and and the times were off, they were too fast or too slow, we wouldn't have got the information that we needed to get in order to plan this event correctly, or we would have possibly had some issues happen on the course.
Holly, what did y'all use for that forecasting piece, the predictive piece?
Oh, experience. I mean, really just a lot of substantive experience with the data, and knowing kind of, hey, this is kind of what's happened in the past, looking at times, knowing what our course was probably going to do, knowing that hills tend to slow races down by a certain percentage. So it was a lot of, there was no specific tool. It was just a lot of digging into the data, snooping around.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
So let me see if I'm going to jump back out here, and I've got a ton of other data inside Tableau, and I'll share this with Karen and Nelson after we're done, so that people can dig around in there. But I think we're going to run out of time, so I won't bother to click in there right now. So let me jump back into the simulation, or into the slide deck. Okay, so let me get back to this slide. So just as a recap on that race simulation tool, it was really invaluable in helping us hone in on specific course locations and scenarios, and really helped us to develop plans accordingly. And being able to share this through Tableau Public was a really effective way for us to communicate and disseminate information to a large number of people outside our organization, like some of our key course volunteers, some of the city agencies, et cetera. So it was a way we could really share with them what we thought was going to happen. And they really enabled us to help build those timelines I was talking about with the city, to work with the traffic plan that we knew was going to happen. So 2 things on this map I wanted to point out with the race simulation tool. 2 specific locations that I think you're going to find interesting. One of them was at miles 2, 10, and 18. So remember, it's a loop course, so that mile marker shared 3 mile locations. And then the other one was miles 6, 14, and 22. And these were our 2 personal fluid stations. So this was personal fluid station number 1. This was personal fluid station number 2. And I mention these because I really think these were probably one of the most publicly interesting facets of the race, and one of the spots where we were most vulnerable to disaster. So what are personal fluids, you might ask? Well, each and every trials qualifier had the right to use their own fluids bottles during the race. This was in addition to the general fluid stations that we provided for the athletes. So at these 3 blue stars, we were providing Powerade, water, energy gels to every athlete on every lap, no matter what. So in addition to that, each athlete had the right to say, well, I'm going to use my own bottles and put my own concoction there and place it on the course at these 2 points. So, and they can put any kind of secret sauce in these bottles that they want: Gatorade, water, special carbohydrate concoctions, caffeine, anything that is race legal. So because of the loop course setup, each athlete would then be able to use a total of 6 bottles during the race. They're doing the course, they got to go around 3 times. There's 2 stations. They have the potential to turn in 6 bottles of fluids. So let's do a little math. 672 athletes started the race. 522 opted to use these personal fluid bottles. 3 laps times 2 stations times 522 athletes means that we collected 3,132 individual fluid bottles the day before the race. Our job as an organizer was then to collect these from the runners, assign them to a specific table on the course, package them in a truck, and then deliver them to its designated spot on the course, where some of our best trained volunteers were going to help distribute these to the athletes during the event. On race morning, the fluids bottles were placed on 30 different tables for men. So the men had 30 tables to pick from, and the women had 50 different tables. They were a much larger race. Each of these tables were spaced 10 feet apart. And the runners had to remember their table number and their exact bottle location on the table. Remember that we had the largest Olympic trials qualifier field in history by a long shot. So a personal fluids program of this size and scope had never been attempted before. Each fluid station ended up spanning 4 city blocks. People thought we were crazy, but we had no choice. We had to do this. This was part of our gig when we won the bid. So the entire personal fluids piece really could be an entire presentation just by itself, and it is fascinating to a lot of people. So I just wanted to share 2 pictures and a few things to ponder. The first picture is what a personal fluids table might look like. This picture is actually taken from the 2016 World Marathon Championships. And you can see how all the different bottles are decorated in numerous ways. On our tables, there were a total of 12 bottles per 8-foot table. For the B athletes, these are some that had qualified with slower times, and our A athletes had 6 bottles on each table. And every single table had a bottle in the exact location. So if you were an athlete, you knew every lap. If you were scheduled for table 12, position 3, your bottle every single lap was going to be on that table at that same location. So here's a second picture I want to share. And this is a picture of Peachtree Street, where the first personal fluid stations was located. So notice the width of the road, okay? And remember that on Peachtree Street, we were using both sides of this road. Runners were going up, doing a 180 turn, and coming down. So as many as 400 runners early in the race were sharing just 2 lanes of road up Peachtree Street. Now, what I want you to picture 80 tables, and I apologize for not having a really good picture of this, but I want you to picture 80 tables in the center, right here on the center line, spanning 4 blocks, okay? Lastly, I want you to try and picture these athletes trying to find their specific bottles and grab them successfully, all while running, 5-6 minute pace. What could possibly go wrong? Well, lots of things, right? And here's just one quick thing that could go wrong. Imagine if the lead males were passing the back of the pack women here. It would be a complete nightmare. So these were the types of scenarios that we had to identify through that race simulation, because if a lapping were to happen at this location, this event would have been a catastrophic failure. Many folks thought we would fail here on Big Personal Fluids. Because it was such a tremendously large group of athletes, so much complexity, I think a lot of people were counting on us to fail. But we scienced the heck out of it, loved the challenge, and on race day, we completely nailed the task. Of those 522 athletes, I think maybe 3 athletes missed a couple of bottles or 2. It was really one of the biggest success stories of the trials event, certainly as far as the course goes. So let me see if I can break down the summary of the day. We had 4 of the 6 winners were actually underdog finishers, and that was exciting because it's always a little bit boring when before the race starts who the top 3 are going to be. So 4 of the 6 were underdogs, and that made the race really exciting. Our race produced one of the most exciting trials finishes in history, especially on the men's side. The 2nd and 3rd place finishers, which are Jacob Riley and Abdi, less than a second separated these 2. So they were screaming down Mercedes-Benz Stadium, Centennial Olympic Park, towards the finish line, fighting for that last chance and that last medal. Really exciting. And holy cow, did Atlanta come out for this event. 200,000 spectators lined the course. It was really, truly breathtaking. There were sections of the course. Let's take Peachtree, for example. Peachtree on our course was a 2-mile stretch. There were people 11, 12 deep, each side of the road, shoulder to shoulder, the entire length of Peachtree. The area down near the Olympic Stadium, overwhelmingly packed. It was amazing to see the city come out and support these athletes on February 29th. Really, really cool. One of my favorite quotes was from Molly Seidel, who was the 2nd place finisher in the women's event. And she said, running that day felt like running through a 26-mile scream tunnel. That's how excited the fans were. We didn't have any major course issues occur, which was great. It was kind of a boring day for me. I was on my bike covering that course many miles. And it was great to not have to address any major things. We saw what we expected to see happen, and we saw it where we expected to see it. The personal fluid stations, as I mentioned, worked flawlessly. So it was a huge success. Let me talk about race day weather for a second. I had showed you that graph on the variability. The temperature on race day was fantastic. It was 50 degrees, but we had really strong winds. It was a constant, almost 20-mile-an-hour wind. And then so we had to basically take down a lot of our signage for the safety and protection. So I'm just going to wrap up and say the athletes, coaches, spectators, media, national governing body, all describe this event as the best and most well-executed Olympic trials marathon ever. And if you ever have a boss that that is you love but is not necessarily generous on compliments, this is the text I got from Rich Kanah, who's the executive director. After the female and male winners crossed the line, he texted and said, "That was lights out, knocked down, off the charts good." And that to me was the best compliment we could have gotten probably out of anybody. So just to summarize, Tableau and the analytics that went into the planning of the course and the trial event as a whole really was critical for the ultimate success of the event. And it was great to see Atlanta really come out and shine on February 29th. So that is all I've got. If anybody wants to see the websites, Atlanta2020trials.com is the Olympic Trials website, and then just the general Atlanta Track Club site is atlantatrackclub.org. You can find some more information on the event there.
Well, I really appreciate everything that you talked us through. All the kind of thoughtful planning that y'all did to make all that happen was absolutely fantastic, and just grateful for. Love this, obviously very real world use case of how you guys use data to have a really big impact. And when you can't get it wrong, it's awesome to see how the analysis really comes through. So
it was fascinating just to see like all the logistics that go into that. That was nuts.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for sharing. You should check out the comments.
Okay, cool.
And with that, the last thing I'll do is, I think I can share my screen. Let's see here. Share my screen. Boom, boom. Just one last quick reminder to everyone. Hey, we got Bring Your Boss to ATUG next month. It's going to be Blow the Doors Off. Awesome. And just hope to see everybody there. Karen, anything else on your end? I see you jumping off.
I don't think so. Yeah, make sure you guys register to come to the meeting August 20th. And if anybody does think of any additional suggestions, ideas for future virtual meetings, just send us an email.
Or Slack us.
Yeah, or Slack us.
Awesome. Y'all really appreciate it. We'll leave the chat window open for a little bit. But with that, we will wish you guys a happy Thursday and look forward to seeing you next month. Y'all take care.